6 years ago, I was in chronic pain. I was on the verge of back surgery. I was living on ibuprofen. I didn't have a diagnosis, but I had pain. I had all of the points of fibromyalgia. I had crazy IBS. Previously, years before that, for almost 10 years, I had been on a proton pump inhibitor. I did. I had managed to get myself off, but I still had almost every day insatiable heartburn. Yeah, ibuprofen, that helped that, right? I, as an RN, knew what the outlook looked like. So even back then, I wasn't your typical RN. I became an RN because I truly felt called by God to go into that profession. I had been a hairdresser for 10 years, self-employed, loved it, loved it. I did not leave that career because I was sick of it. I still probably like doing hair better than being a nurse, but I felt called. I had told you a little bit about that spiritual awakening, and it was time to leave that small town. It was time to leave so I could become who I was intended to be. And a lot of times you can't do that in a small town. I felt called to being a nurse because I felt like as a nurse, I could go to places that Christians couldn't go. Like I saw it as a mission field. And I had no idea what was coming from me for me or where I would land. So I moved. I took my two young um, they were in like first and second grade, somewhere around in there, took them and relocated, moved completely away from my support system. I went back to college full time. I spent that time, I did college full time, the full credit load. I worked, I had two kids, and we did it. We just made it work. I had the grace of the Lord with me. I had mentioned earlier about my learning issues. And with maturity, 10 years under my belt, and success, and those transitions, the things I had been through, even so young, I was super confident in myself, and I was super confident in my leading, in my faith, and knowing that I was supposed to be there. So when I got into nursing school, it was not easy, especially algebra. I had to get the books came with CD-ROMs, and I had to go over the lessons over and over and over. It was still super hard for my brain. But I got a 4-year degree, and I graduated with honors. That is grace. Gosh. Sorry, I didn't expect that. I've kind of been in a little bit of a dry place with my faith. So bringing these memories back is powerful, and I need it. I need this refreshing. So stick with me. Like I said, you're going to get raw, you're going to get real. I went back to nursing school, and I went absolutely all in on social services. That's a thing that we'll talk about too. Those things to me were a gift. I got help. I took out loans. I got work study. I got housing. I got food stamps. I did all of that. I got all of that help in that season. And that I still believe is what those systems were designed for. In that season, I prayed for the taxpayers. I was so thankful for their help. And as a young person with the heart of an entrepreneur, I had my own business. I had loans. I had great credit. In those days, I used credit cards wisely. I still use credit cards wisely. But even then, we absolutely were the poor people. We lived far below poverty standards, but absolutely no one would have ever known that. I lived on a little credit to make sure that my kids did not look like poor kids. I lived on a little credit to make sure we had a little reliable vehicle to drive. Um, I didn't financially, I had no assistance from my ex. I didn't have to lean on my parents. Like, I am a very proud person, and I don't know when or where that happened. Actually, I do. That's gonna be maybe a story for a different episode. No, no, let's just do it. I have got so many pivots where Yahweh, that's where I call him, that's who I call him now, when Yahweh flipped a switch in my life. And I think, I don't remember, but I think in episode 1, I told you about the bratty teenager I was. A brat, a lazy beer drinking brat. But my parents trusted me. Even when I was a brat, I always had a stellar moral code compared to all the other kids I hung out with. I mean, like, I drank and partied and had premarital sex, but I still had way better moral code than most people. So anyway, my parents trusted me. They were amazing people. Were then and now my favorite people, my best friends. They were only 18 years older than me. They were married when they were in high school. So anyway, oh, you're gonna get this a lot. What was I talking about? Seriously, what was I talking about? Okay, I think it was taxes and living on social services. I did that for 4 years, and I was so thankful. It was an absolute blessing. Even my nursing program, you did the first 2 years, you graduated as an LPN, and then you came back in and finished as an RN with a bachelor's degree. So I worked in the hospital as an LPN while I went to school. And I worked at the bookstore on my, whatever you call it, student loan funding. I had plenty of debt. I took out all the loans, and that really helped us not look like we were living in poverty. My kids didn't know we were broke. And they're, even now as adults, they're amazing, responsible people, and they'll look back and say, "What went on there? How did you do that when we were kids?" So anyway, but the minute I could go to work, I went to work and I paid my taxes and I got off all those services within. That's why I went to be an RN. Like I said, I didn't really love it. I felt cold to it. And I knew that that was probably the best income I was going to earn for my kids and I. And also back then, I was under the false impression that my loans would get paid back magically because there was a nursing shortage. Well, that never did happen. I worked it off. I paid it off. But in a few short years, I worked full time. I did the side hustle. I loved to be self employed. I made my own LLC, a private nursing company, where I did a little private nursing stuff on the side. So even back then, I knew if I would have got to keep my tax money, I wouldn't have needed the second job. It was really what came out of my taxes that I needed to make my house payment. And I bought my own house within a few years. Single mom, bought the house, had a decent car, all the things, because I'm so freaking stubborn, hardworking, and determined, and called to be above average. So this is the me that I showed my kids, right? And yeah, I mean, I was away a lot because I worked a lot. My kids were like latchkey kids who kind of had to raise themselves, but I don't think they think of it that way.
If you're ready to take back control of your health, you're in the right place. Welcome to Awaken Wellness with me, Tanya Candy, registered nurse and health coach. Now, I'm not your typical nurse. I consider myself divorced from traditional healthcare. I broke free of the sick care system in 2019 when I realized that the root cause to my sickness, my autoimmune disease, and my chronic pain was me. If you're ready for truth, for clarity, for honesty in a tough, love, compassionate way, I'm the coach for you. Join me while we dig into our root causes of sickness and disease.
All right. So back to my chronic pain and where I was at 6 years ago with that referral for a back surgeon. Like I said, I wasn't your typical nurse. I didn't love being a nurse. I definitely didn't love drugs. And I've never loved doing things the easy way. I was kind of stuck. Like this pain really had me jammed up and I didn't know what to do about it. I honestly hadn't really considered that somehow this was my fault. I was completely oblivious. So this old me, the me that you wouldn't recognize, I'm not sure I recognize, but I appreciate her. She made me who I was today. When my kids were babies, I was completely programmed. I didn't think twice about vaccines. Back then in the 90s, I don't know if it was just my neighborhood or it was everywhere, but they had me convinced that my boobs were gross and a public shame and that formula was the only way to go. Like, honestly, I did not even consider breastfeeding. I didn't even consider it, and nobody tried to talk me into it. So, like, that's that era in the 90s. And like I said, maybe it was just me. I'm sure there was crunchy moms back then too that had different beliefs, but not me. I was hip. I was trendy. I was I don't know what the word for it is. Definitely not old-fashioned, progressive, right? So praise the Lord that my kids turned out all right because I was a complete programmed idiot. You'll hear me a lot. My heart to support these young moms who are awakened, that's big responsibility. You're going to hear me cuss. You're going to hear me talk about how much I love God, and you're going to hear me cuss anyway. If you're going to follow my podcast, I get passionate, and yep, I use a few. I use a few cuss words here and there. So anyway, my old health was falling apart. This point in my life, I was really kind of angry about things. I knew I didn't like healthcare. And I was past, and I worked in corrections the majority of my career. And we'll talk a lot about the lessons that I learned in those years from people, from the demons I spoke to in those jail cells, and really wishing that I would have known what I know now about parasites and deliverance. So we're going to talk a lot about my years as a jail nurse. So anyway, and there too, inspired by the Lord to go where Christians couldn't go, but nurses could. That was to the jails. Lots of stories to come about that. So I, even as a nurse, medications were just not on my radar, not past over-the-counter things. I knew with fibromyalgia diagnosis, which I don't have, by the way, because I don't go to doctors. Even then, before my awakening, I was not about to spend all that time in a waiting room, taking all the stupid tests, doing all the labs to get a bullshit diagnosis like fibromyalgia. But I know that's what it would have been. IBS for sure. And we'll talk about when my hemoglobin was 7 and I had to have a transfusion and how I lived on Diet Coke and stress. We'll talk about all that as we talk about my root causes being me, being just living the normal average life, being an oblivious dumbass. Like, there too, dumbass, that is one of my taglines. I need to tell my chat GPT about that. Dumbass, there should be an ICD-9 code for dumbass. And spoiled brat syndrome. There should be a code for that as well. That's good stuff you're gonna get in this podcast. That's right. So I didn't want to take medication. I would have been willing to have surgery. My bulging discs were bad. In my lower back, right where that bad digestion and that inflammatory ball sits, that, my friends, is how people get degenerative disc disease. Like, that's not by accident. That is your flaming guts leaking into your peritoneal cavity, literally breaking down your spine. Yeah, that's the stuff we're going to talk about. So, anyway, to have surgery or not have surgery, that led me to find my PEMF machine, pulse electromagnetic field. And at the time, I started to say that because I hated my job, I had grown cold working in corrections, hated medicine, I hated the medical field. I didn't want to learn another thing about any of it. I was just there to collect a paycheck. And oh, I had gone so cold. I was so burnt out on people. Like, bleh, like seriously, just burnt out. So when I moved to Montana, when I got remarried, and we'll talk about all of that, it's an amazing story. Amazing, amazing story. How God has just put all these things together. All these things that if you would have told me when I was 20 that I would be sitting here at 52 with all this behind me, whew, who would? Who would believe it? So, right. Anyway, to have surgery or to not have surgery is the question. I found my PEMF machine, and that led me down the rabbit trail looking for other answers, getting relief, started making changes. I found some multi-level marketing company with some really great supplements at that time, and that started an education that I didn't know I needed about that one, glutathione in the nerve 2 pathway, which led me to more and more research and more opening and getting relief, learning that I had a sugar issue and just a little bit of diet control, just a little bit of willpower, making some changes made such a difference. And then, and then my son, who had never really dated, found Jen. Okay. All right. Stick with me. So he finds this amazing woman that he brings into our life, and he was ready. They moved fast. They got married fast. They started a family fast. It was amazing. I had never, as a nurse, given much consideration to a lot of the things I did. It was just part of the job. Honestly, I didn't give a shit. I didn't see myself as like a used car salesman, right? It's just a job. There were just certain parts of the job that went with the job. And Jen, when she was pregnant with their first baby, she comes to me and she says, I don't think I want to vaccinate our kids. And me, as a nurse, said, shit, really? Didn't matter to me either way. I honestly, at that moment in my life, I had never thought twice about it. And I really think that that's where most of your medical professionals are. They're just walking through that programming and it's just part of their job and it's just what they've been told, right? Just like if you like Chevys or Fords. For whatever reason, you just identify with that. But what really went through my mind was, whoa. And I mean, I told her that. I'm like, I'm going to have to help you. I'm going to have to protect you. We're going to have to do some research. If you need me to, I'll go to your appointments with you. Because even the nicest, sweetest disposition nurses say some really mean, nasty, and ugly shit in the break room about people who don't vaccinate their kids. I knew she was potentially going to get really bullied, and this could be a big deal. This could be like a CPS deal. This could be a big deal. And instantly, again, pivotal moment, a switch flipped in me. That mama bear, like that protect my own. And I mean that with everything. Up until that point, I had no education, really pro or against. I had no feelings about it. In fact, I had done this really stupid thing when I first moved to where I live now in Montana to work at the hospital. I was getting remarried. I was moving. I was absolutely too stressed and too lazy to find my own personal vaccine records. And so, just out of blatant laziness, when I started this new job, I took a huge handful of those vaccines again because I was too lazy to find my records. Like, that's how I just didn't know. I had no idea. I had no reverence for those ingredients or what they did. Now I know that was probably a pivotal moment in my own disease process, in my own autoimmune, that vaccine injure, right? So, back to Jen, back to saying, I'm with you. I'll support you. Whatever you decide, you are these children's mother. And if she would have wanted them vaccinated at the time, I would have supported her in that too. And even now, I'm not here to talk anybody into anything or out of anything. I'm not pro, for, or anti anything except for choice and autonomy and our right to choose for our own bodies. Honestly, on every subject. I don't care what the subject is. Somebody better not tell me how to live my own life or what to do with my body. My moral code, who I answer to on Judgment Day, that's about me. It's not about the state. It's not about my neighbor. It's not about the person sitting across from me at church or at the dinner table. That is about me, however that looks. And that's how I feel about all of those touchy subjects. It's up to me to decide. I'm the only one that will face judgment for my actions, right? So, anyway, I was uh, looking for information. How am I going to support this lady? I'm not going to let her go out here on that ledge and do it by herself, right? That's a lonely place to be. And I didn't know anybody in that camp at that time. That was only 6 years ago. So this conversion, this awakening is pretty raw for me. I have a lot to learn. There's probably a lot of you listening to this podcast that have been in this camp for a long time that know a lot more than I do. And I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait for your mentorship. So to support Jen, again, pivotal moment God assigned. It was a 4-hour drive. I found kind of a health rally, kind of an anti-vaxxer rally, health freedom thing 6 years ago. So, things were starting to kind of heat up. There was a pimple that was going to get popped, right? And so I went to this rally. It was a hassle. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to drive by myself. It was hard on my schedule. Nothing about it in the flesh I wanted to do, but I knew in my spirit that God had something for me there. Either someone I needed to meet or something. There was a reason, absolute reason that I had to be there. So I went. And yeah, that pivotal moment happened. It happened in the biggest way ever. But this is how my life goes. Nothing in my life happens by accident. It happens when I get humble, when I submit. Anything God has ever asked me to do has been humiliating, embarrassing, hard, right? That's how I know it's Him. If the shit's too easy, that ain't the Holy Spirit talking, right? So anyway, I go to this convention and listen to this chiropractor speech. Give credit where credit is due. Patrick Flynn from the Wellness Way out of Green Bay. This little bald, cocky, male chauvinist asshole. But what this guy is saying, I'm like, yeah, come on now. This is what I've been thinking my whole life. Talking about hormones and your body healing itself and not needing medications and all this stuff. I'm on my phone while he's talking, checking out his website. And like that, I find they've got an academy. They've got a functional wellness academy there, right there. I knew that's why I was there. That is the bus I was getting on. So it was a self-paced certificate course. We learned how to look at labs from a functional perspective. We learned about the body and nutrition. And as a nurse, it aligned, it aligned. Like it was a great refresher course with a different perspective. And boom, boom, boom. It was absolutely where I was supposed to be. Another pivotal moment, my awakening. And when I go back to it, you're going to hear me go back a lot of times. Scotty, so on my family, my line, that was my bloodline, my first granddaughter. She's named after my father. She is so much personality and wired like me. You'll hear a lot of stories about her. And there too, it's I didn't have kids to experiment on with holistic stuff. So I appreciate Jen and my daughter and these crunchy moms. Like it is in my heart to take you all under my wing as you experiment on your kids, as I help you, as I guide you, as I support you, because I cannot imagine how I would balance being awake to all of this and having littles. Like, I really kind of appreciate my oblivion that I raised my kids in. We have got to support each other as a community. This grandma, this protector role in me, it's a big thing. It's a big calling. It's not an ask, it's an honor. I am honored to support these young moms the best that I know how. If they're willing to trust me as we meander through this process together. Yeah, so we better wrap up this episode. But if you want to be in this community, I want you here. I want to help you face the world that is coming without fear. I want to help you. I want to help you raise kids that are not going to be that are not going to be NPC characters in this world that is coming for us. I want to help you raise generation changers. It can still be done. It can still be done. That's it for this episode, folks. That's all I got.
All right, all you ambitious professionals that are ready to take back control of your health, here is your call to action. Number 1, follow on social media. We would truly appreciate your likes and your shares. Next, go to awakenwellnessllc.com and get your discovery call scheduled. If you're on the website and you drop under information, you can see our package and service options. If you're local, stop in the store and say, hey. If you'll be working with us online, get that discovery call booked. Let's talk soon.